Good afternoon, good morning, depending on your time zone. Welcome to our webinar on USDA's recently announced Fertilizer Investment and Expansion for Long-Term Supply, what we've commonly dubbed as FIELDS. My name is Lisa Nodi, and I'm part of the team that's administering the FIELDS program. Thank you for participating today. We realize that this was scheduled on very short notice, but we thought it was important to get it delivered as soon as we could. Our webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be available very shortly on the FIELDS website. The web page contains several tabs, and the webinar recording will be placed in the Events tab. We encourage applicants to check the FIELDS web page periodically. In the event that there are updates, this will be the vehicle that we will communicate them. We are working on clearing a set of FAQs. We anticipate that even after they're posted, that there will be future iterations. So there again, we will continue to post them on the website. As applications are being developed and questions come up, we encourage you to submit them through the FIELDS email account. That's fields@usda.gov. We will continue to respond to the questions. As of this morning, we were pretty well caught up. There was only a few that we were still developing responses for. So our presenters today, introducing our team today, we have Casey Elkins. Casey Elkins is a specialist out of our North Dakota ranks. We have Greg York. He's one of our national office specialists. And Casey Watson. Casey is a specialist out of our Montana ranks. We have several more members working on the fertilizer program, but this is the presenters for today. We note that we have good attendance from our RBCS staff on the call. We welcome you, but we want to make sure that we get all the questions, concerns from our external stakeholders answered. If our staff have questions, we'll be happy to answer those if you just want to give any of us a call. With that, we'll go ahead and get started on the presentation. We have the agenda on the screen right now. We've divided the presentation up into several sections. Program overview, applicant eligibility, project eligibility, application requirements, scoring, a little bit of a timeline discussion, and then Q&As. We will be passing the proverbial mic back and forth between the presenters. Next slide. The FIELDS program was developed to help address the need to expand domestic fertilizer manufacturing, strengthening Americans' fertilizer supply, and improving the long-term affordability of farmers. It supports several executive orders that are in place, executive orders emphasizing boosting domestic energy and critical mineral production. The FIELDS program supports the national focus on strengthening the supply chain and lowering input costs. And as it's directly tied to federal actions aimed to expand fertilizer production, improve competition, and reduce dependency on foreign supply. Next slide, please. The FIELDS program is authorized through the CCC Charter Act, which allows CCC funds to be used for materials and the facilities required for production and marketing of agriculture commodities. The FIELDS program is being administered based on the Notice of Funding Opportunity initially released July 1st and updated July 7th. I'll now turn it over to Casey Elkins for the program overview.
Hi, next slide, please. Thanks, Lisa. So what does this program do? FIELDS focuses on expanding independent, made in America, process manufacturing of fertilizer, specifically nitrogen, sulfur, phosphorus, and potash, to give U.S. producers more reliable domestic options. It also helps reduce vulnerability to disruptions by strengthening U.S.-based production. The program improves competition and reduces market concentration by supporting more innovative production approaches, including enhanced efficiency fertilizers, outside of the entities that hold the fourth largest share in these nutrients. These projects are designed to be energy secure and farmer focused. Together, they help strengthen national input cost stability and protect the long-term security of American agriculture and food production. Next slide. Thank you. So how the program's purposes will be achieved. FIELDS is structured to achieve these goals in a few clear ways. The program provides $500 million in competitive funding to expand domestic process manufacturing capacity of fertilizer. These investments can support new construction, upgrades to existing facilities, expansions, and even bringing idled capacity back into use. Projects are expected to be innovative, energy efficient, made in America, and focused on farmer benefit. And FIELDS gives priority to projects that are further along in development, those that are technically feasible, financially viable, have identified their funding sources, essentially implementation ready. Next slide, please. Funding availability. FIELDS offers $500 million in total funding. The maximum award is $150 million, and applicants must provide a 1-to-1 non-federal match. The performance period may be up to 60 months, reflecting the complexity of the project. The minimum award of $15 million combined with the required match results in a minimum total project cost of $30 million. And at the upper end, the maximum award of $150 million requires a total project investment of $300 million or more. These figures reflect the program's focus on substantial capital projects that can significantly increase domestic fertilizer production. And with that overview, I'll now turn it over to Greg to cover applicant eligibility. Thanks, Greg.
All right, good morning, everybody. Talk a little bit about applicant eligibility. Move to the next slide, if you don't mind, please. All right, so the FIELDS program is open to a broad range of applicants. You can see them here, but just to cover them all real quick, eligible entities include tribes and tribal entities, Alaskan Native corporations, for-profit businesses and corporations, nonprofit organizations, producer-owned cooperatives and corporations, certified benefit corporations, and state and local government entities. Private entities must be independently owned and operated, and all applicants must meet the requirements outlined in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. A little note about the Alaska Native corporations. The agency will provide additional flexibility to ensure consistency with the tribal provision in the NOFO. If a project is proposed on ANC fee lands, the agency will accept documentation showing the ANC's legal authority to control or manage those lands in place of a tribal resolution of consent. Also, and as I mentioned, and as you'll hear throughout this presentation, many of the program requirements, including applicant eligibility, were intentionally kept broad to encourage as many high-quality, implementation-ready applications as possible, especially those that can make a meaningful impact on the domestic fertilizer market. If you are unsure whether your entity is eligible, I'd suggest reaching out to one of us either via email or scheduling a call with one of the members of the team to talk about your ownership structure. Next slide, please. All right. Eligible applicants must meet several core requirements. First, they must operate within the United States or its territories, and proposed projects must also be physically located within the United States or its territories. Applicants must be domestically owned and must either currently process manufactured fertilizer or plan to do so in compliance with all applicable federal, state, tribal, and local regulations governing fertilizer production manufacturing, or fertilizer process manufacturing. In addition, applicants must be registered in the System of Award Management, or SAM. You must be registered at the time of application and must maintain that active SAM registration throughout the time of your award. We do recommend, because the process can take a little bit of time, that you start that SAM registration process early. It is a free registration process done through sam.gov. There are a lot of sites out there that will try to encourage you to do it through them for a fee, but it's free on sam.gov. Go there and start the process as soon as you can. Next slide. All right, applicants must also meet several additional eligibility requirements intended to support competition and ensure good standing with the federal government. For projects involving nitrogen, sulfur, phosphate, potash, or any combination of those nutrients, applicants must certify that they and any affiliates do not hold a market share greater than or equal to the fourth largest entity in the market segment. If an applicant believes that this top 4 market share test does not accurately reflect the competitive landscape for the segment in which they are proposing to add capacity, they may submit a justification with their application for agency review and approval. For projects involving other eligible nutrients not listed here, the certification is not required. In addition, multiple applications from affiliate entities are not permitted. So affiliate applicants should coordinate and submit only one application in response to this NOFO. Applicants and their principals must also not be debarred, suspended, or otherwise excluded from participation in USDA programs. They also must not be delinquent on any federal debt or subject to any outstanding federal judgments. As part of the review process, the agency will verify eligibility through required federal screening tools, which includes the do not pay system. And next slide, please. Applicants that have received a current or prior FPAP award may still apply under this program, but only for a project or a project phase that is clearly separate from or additive to the work previously funded from FPAP. In other words, applicants must be able to show that the proposed work is distinct and expands beyond the scope of an earlier FPAP funded effort rather than continuing or duplicating it. More broadly, fields funds cannot be used to duplicate or replace previously funded federal funding. It also may not be used to satisfy cost share or matching requirements for other federal grant awards, including FPAP. These requirements are intended to ensure the fields funds support new eligible activities and complement rather than overlap with other federal investments. And I think that's it for my on the eligible applicants. I'm going to turn it over to Casey Watson.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. It's also important we discuss what makes a project eligible under this funding opportunity. This entails items like the production process, expectations we'll have for the facility and the product itself, and of course, what funds can and can't be used for. Up first, on the production process requirements, you'll see a definition we've indicated for you. For projects to be eligible under this opportunity, applicants must demonstrate that the production process used aligns with characteristic change requirements defined under process manufacturing. For the purposes of fields, process manufacturing entails either a physical, mechanical, or chemical change that has altered the chemistry or physical attributes of raw material inputs into a final fertilizer product. For a physical alteration, this could include changes to size, density, moisture, solubility, or other physical changes that impact the release profile. Some examples of some possible activities that indicate a physical change would be grinding, milling, pelletizing, or granulating. These operations materially affect how the nutrients are either delivered, stored, or applied. For a chemical transformation, the manufacturing process must entail a change in the overall chemical composition of the raw material through a method such as oxidation, acidulation, or bonding. The simple blending of various raw materials would not constitute a chemical change. Under a mechanical change, the process should entail the use of variables such as heat, pressure, or other mechanical systems which convert raw material into a stable product. Activities could include items like coating, compaction, spray drying, or curing. It is also very important to note that the steps under a mechanical change need to result in the creation of a product, not just a mixture. Mixing or blending becomes eligible when it is one step within a broader workflow that results in transformation. The bagging of raw materials as a standalone step will not be considered a transformation under this definition. As a reminder, these are all examples of, but not limited to. It is also important to note that the manufacturing process is not the only expectation of a successful project under this program. The application should demonstrate a clear, well-supported operation for which either exists today or will be expanding capacity. It will be newly constructed for the purposes of producing an eligible fertilizer nutrient, or it is reactivating an otherwise idle operation capable of fertilizer production. In all cases, applicants should emphasize and highlight how the proposed project will materially increase capacity to support the demand of the defined market versus simply improving the operational efficiency. Successful projects under this funding opportunity will also incorporate a work plan and budget deliverable which directly supports their manufacturing process. And this will be through demonstrated increases in output, either via new construction, purchasing or modernizing equipment, upgrades to existing facility infrastructure, and process improvements to deliver the greatest amount of product to market. Applicants must clearly define and document a fertilizer product for which they produce or plan to produce that incorporates one or a combination of nitrogen, phosphate, sulfur, or potash as a nutrient to sustain plant growth. This product must be marketed and sold as such, and should not be listed or known as a substitute or alternative to fertilizer. Lastly, successful projects will demonstrate an implementation-ready posture, having completed initial phases of design and engineering or planning, supported from a technical feasibility perspective, and demonstrate a strong financial position through historical and pro forma projection-based evidence. As we look at the eligible uses of funds under this program, it is also important to remember that every allowable activity must support one core purpose: materially increasing domestic fertilizer and the manufacturing capacity. This slide outlines eligible uses by category, so applicants can align their budgets to further strengthen the proposed scope. Construction or expansion costs and activities must show a measurable increase to capacity versus simply replacing operations. Applications should plan to include construction and design plans for which provide a clear demonstration of the expansion. Please note, though, that projects involving construction for which grant funds will be utilized may be subject to procurement and contract provisions required under federal awards. The purchase and installation of equipment is eligible when it is contributing to a gain in throughput, efficiency, or production volume as it relates to the reference process manufacturing. Modernization efforts for which reduce bottlenecks, improve reliability, or enable expanded capacity are also eligible. Funds may be used to support compliance and occupational safety measures, which are a result of the planned production increases. These requests should reinforce worker safety and higher capacity operation. Activities related to planning, permitting, and design are allowed when accompanied with larger construction or equipment expansion scope. Working capital expenses are also permitted only when it directly supports increased production, such as scaling raw materials, increasing throughput through staffing, or quality control measures. Working capital cannot cover general operating costs. Applicants must clearly define expenses categorized under working capital and clearly tie it to the expanded manufacturing activity. Logistical costs such as distribution, transportation, and storage are also permitted under this award when they are directly tied to improved or increased capacity. As an important note, design engineering, working capital, and logistic activities, although they are permitted, they cannot be the primary use of funds. Finally, it is important we define clearly what FIELDS program is not intended to support. And that would be projects that do not materially increase domestic U.S. Fertilizer manufacturing capacity. Any process manufacturing for which is not commercially available today or already in use. Research and development of any kind. A product that is registered, marketed, and sold as an alternative or substitute to commercial fertilizer. A project for which appears to provide standalone storage, blending, bagging, distribution, or resale when not accompanied with an eligible process manufacturing operation that is also operated by the applicant. For instance, this program is not intended to assist aggregation or custom agronomy blend operations which do not include a manufacturing process. Duplicative assistance for projects which have been previously funded, awarded under the Fertilizer Production Expansion Program, also known as FPEP, and when that work plan is not substantially different. Lisa, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay. In this section, we're going to talk about the application requirements, what we're looking for to consider an application complete. Kind of what this slide is what I would call the meat of the proposal. We're going to look for an executive summary, kind of a summary of the project, including the goals and objectives. We have asked for it to be no longer than 500 words. applicant information, structure of the entity applying, and the relationship of any of its affiliates, project information, the details on the project, including a work plan and budget, breakdown of activities by task, the associated dollars with those tasks, and the time frame for which they will be completed. Sufficient detail should be included so that we can determine project eligibility. Costs incurred after the award are eligible, so we'll make sure that the budget looks at costs incurred after the award. Land ownership and access. Where's the project going to be? How is it accessible? You know, the just give us the details on the land and the facility. Assessment of production volume. Again, this is going to be very important as we look at increasing supply of domestic fertilizer. We're looking for a unit of measure with projected acreage to be covered and the number of farmers served. The criteria that we'll use when we evaluate the applications, we'll want to make sure that that's addressed in the project narrative. The financial projections, evidence that the proposed project is viable, technical merit and performance, technology being proposed, designed, how components function in relation to the finished product, any type of testing analysis that's been conducted, and evidence that the technology is commercially available. And then we've talked a little bit about the non-federal portion of this, the financing and capital. Where is that coming from? The details on where that's coming from should also be included. Next slide. For financial viability, we're looking for a business plan. We're looking for 3 years of historical financials, including the balance sheets and income statements. Current financials, balance sheet and income statement no older than 90 days. And then 2 years of performance projections. So 2 years of balance sheets, projected balance sheets, income statements, and cash flow analysis. Next slide. A feasibility study. There's lots of discussion about feasibility studies. So first of all, feasibility study is a defined term in the notice. So you'll want to look at that. It talks about being a comprehensive study with an opinion or finding prepared by a qualified consultant, which is also a defined term in the notice, and includes an evaluation of the following: economic, market, technical, financial, and management feasibility. Those should all be opinioned in the feasibility study. Now, they might be opinioned by different parties, but one feasibility study should cover those items. There is also a feasibility study guide on the website. It may answer a few more questions, but it is available also. Okay, next slide. Matching funds documentation. With the application, we want to clearly see where the matching funds are coming from. The matching funds need to be equal to or greater than 50% of the project costs. Obviously, those commitments need to be free of any conflict of interest. And if they're conditioned, we're going to look at any conditions that are applied to those and make sure that they don't conflict with the work plan, performance period, requirements set forth in the notice. So basically that they support the guidelines of the program. This is being administered as a reimbursement grant. So eligible project costs will be incurred, paid for, and then documentation will be provided. We'll review it, and then we'll ACH out the fields portion of the reimbursement request. Next slide. This is kind of a consolidated checklist for what needs to be included in the application. There is a more detailed checklist also on the website, but basically it's just, double checking to make sure that everything that needs to be included is included. In addition to the project narrative we've talked about, there's the SF family that needs to be Included, there's an environmental checklist. If you have multiple sites, you'll want to include an environmental checklist for each of the sites, and then all the supporting documentation to support the proposal. Next slide. Applications will not be considered for funding if they're received after the submission deadline. The submission deadline is August 17th. If it's submitted any other vehicle other than grants.gov, we're not planning to accept anything other than what's submitted through grants.gov. There is a funding opportunity. We need to make sure that proposals follow that funding opportunity so that they map to the proper place and we can retrieve them. And if applications are not responsive to all the requirements of the NOFO, the project isn't eligible, the applicant isn't eligible, incomplete application, not supported, any of those things will be conditions for not accepting the application. Next slide. Funding restrictions, we're looking at how funds can be used. Both award and the matching funds may only be used for eligible purposes. Funds cannot be used to pay for project costs incurred before the award is approved. The period of performance is set to not exceed 60 months from the date of the award. So as you structure your timeline, you'll want to make sure that you keep that in mind. Any program income that's earned, I don't really think that will be applicable, but that is subject to recapture. And then we have not factored in indirect costs. So indirect costs are not part of what's considered as eligible project costs. Next slide. Okay, so I'll turn it over to Greg to discuss scoring criteria.
All right, and talk a little bit about scoring criteria and also a little bit about the selection process here at the end. So applications will be evaluated through a merit-based scoring process, and some criteria may be reviewed through a multi-stage evaluation process that can include both an automated and a reviewer-based scoring model. In general, the strongest applications will be those that clearly align with the purposes of the Fields program and present a project that is well tailored to the applicant's operations, market, and community. Keep in mind that an emphasis will be given to projects that are implementation ready, meaning they are sufficiently advanced in their planning, financing, technical development, and they're ready to basically execute or move forward with the project, and they deliver or demonstrate a strong likelihood of success in their application. Applications with strong, well-documented evidence, such as financing commitments, site control, permitting completed, engineering work done, procurement planning satisfied, and those who have offtake agreements in place are likely to score more competitively than applications built on preliminary assumptions or less developed project plans. Next slide, please. As noted throughout this presentation, the most competitive applications will be those that are implementation ready and are supported by strong documentation. All scoring will be conducted using a weighted tiered scale, and I'd encourage every one of the applicants to review section 5.1 of the NOFO for a complete breakdown of the scoring, their weights, and their scales. Next slide, please. In addition to the core scoring criterion, the agency may award up to 10 discretionary administrator points. These points may be used to recognize projects that help rural communities with economic recovery, as well as projects that support geographic diversity by addressing regional needs related to fertilizer production, storage, and transportation. And next slide, please. And then finally, for this section, and I'm going to back up just a little bit and talk about the applications in general when they come in. You will receive a notice from us within 30 days of receiving the application that we have received your application and are processing it. The agency will then move on to the eligibility review phase, where we review the applications for both completeness and eligibility in accordance with the NOFO. And then those applications that are deemed or determined to be eligible will then move forward to the scoring evaluation and scoring process that I previously discussed. From there, once the scoring is complete, applications will be ranked based off their score, and the funding decisions will be made in rank order, starting with the highest scoring application and continuing until available funds are exhausted. The agency may also offer partial funding at its discretion and may choose not to fund lower scoring applications. And I think I'm going to turn it back over for the next steps to.
I have that section. Yeah, I have that section. So this slide represents what we're projecting to be a timeline for processing. The application window closes August 17th. Greg mentioned we'll send out an application receipt notice, and then we anticipate the processing to take processing, reviewing, scoring, completeness, all of that will probably take us till the end of October. So at that point, we anticipate that we'll be able to preliminary selections and then start the environmental review process. So that's kind of a best estimate on our timeline for right now. So here's our team of contacts. Casey, go ahead and close it out.
Yeah. Thanks, Lisa. We're going to pause here to highlight our contacts and resources that we're making available under this program to applicants or stakeholders. On the contact side, please note the direct program email, which will connect you to your inquiry or your request to the full team. It will be picked up in the order of receipt. And again, we encourage that for all first-time inquiries or general application questions. And you'll get a response as we're able to pick that up and get it out as quickly as we can. The full fields team directory is available with phone and email information as well. Just a quick note, although project location is not tied to a specific contact, some of these team members may not be located in your same time zone. All program content has been made available to you at rd.usda.gov. Under the Business Programs Directory page, you'll see the Fields program listing. It provides some high-level content for you, as well as provides a link to the grants.gov application site. And then lastly, applications under this funding opportunity should be submitted online. And we provided a link here that will route you to the application site. You'll see a reference there for the simpler grants.gov. And then that elevates you up to an intake where you can do your uploads. This is also where you'll find application support materials such as the notice of funding opportunity, the guides for feasibility, application checklist, the certification forms, as well as the SF family for your SF 424 A, C, and D. Please follow these links to complete the document upload and complete your full submission by the August 17th deadline. And with that, we'll pause here to work through the Q&A. So just give us a moment here while we pull that up and start running through some of those. And I think if the full team can join me here, we'll tag team some of these responses here for the group. We are running ahead of schedule, so if you have not posted a question already and it's been answered, please do so. Feel free to drop a Q&A question in there. Our first question that's up there, Greg, maybe I'll pass that one to you. Will organic fertilizer production be included in this program?
Yeah, whether it's organic or not, if it's fertilizer and it has a direct impact on the domestic fertilizer production and availability here in this country, it would be eligible.
So thank you. Would biochar production qualify?
I can take that one, Casey. So again, it has to meet the definition of a fertilizer. Typically, we think of biochar as being a soil amendment, but if an application makes a case that it qualifies as a fertilizer, it's licensed as a fertilizer, it could be eligible.
Thanks, Lisa. What constitutes a qualified consultant and who is able to provide a feasibility study? Is there a list? I can grab that one. We have like I said, clear definitions both of what your feasibility study requirement is, as well as who's able to provide that in terms of a qualification. Really, a couple important notes to take away on that is, as a qualified consultant, this needs to be a third party to the general operation, right? So this shouldn't be anyone linked directly to the applicant. This should not be linked to any vendor that's also providing grant application assistance. It does need to be, in fact, a third party unbiased opinion that's doing all the information gathering, soliciting the feedback, and then ultimately providing that opinion to those categories. We do not maintain a list of feasibility providers. You are welcome to source that as you wish, either through referrals or a general procurement search. All right, what is the process to receive an application waiver?
I'm responding back to that one. Just gonna see
Okay.
what
Yeah.
type of waiver they're actually asking about, and then we'll
Thanks,
we'll get
Greg.
back to that one.
Awesome. How can we schedule a call with team members? Absolutely. From the contact slide, and again, these slide deck and of course the recording of this webinar will be provided out. You can reach out to the general fields email and just request a team member to schedule a call with you. We'll reach back out, coordinate that the best window we can, and happy to jump on with you or your project team to discuss. Lisa, can matching funds be documented as pending at the August submission deadline with formal confirmation submitted later if the award is granted?
Get my audio off. So we are at least asking for the matching funds to be identified at the time of application. That's to kind of get you through the gate. The stronger that you document your commitment of funds, the better your application will compete. So yes, but is the answer.
Thanks, Lisa. And I think, Greg, you might hit this answer already. I know we have a couple instances, right? Can I match with a USDA guaranteed loan, such as business and industry, which would be eligible to satisfy the requirement? That answer, yes, we do allow matching funds to be from the source of a guaranteed loan. However, by the application deadline, you must have been issued a conditional commitment under your business and industry loan application. Greg, you want to take funding instruments that are acceptable for non-federal matching? Debt or equity?
Yeah, I think that one's any type of commitment that you have from a bank, financial institution, lending institution that shows commitment to loan the funds in the event either you're awarded the grant or whether or not you're awarded the grant would satisfy just whatever kind of commitment that you have from that financial institution.
Thank you. Will USDA offer the volume of production or ownership of the lowest of the top 4 producers that is being used? And I think if we can take that question away, we'll get some more detail and make sure we understand that correctly so we can give you that appropriate answer. Will there be additional funding rounds if all funding isn't awarded in the first round? Lisa?
From the tone that we're getting right now, we think that there'll be plenty of applications for the funds. So we are not anticipating another round at this time.
Greg, I see one in here that we've answered through some other platforms. Based on a scenario where we have a US-based company securing licensing from a foreign company to produce fertilizer in the US, based on proprietary technology, would that be considered eligible?
So I think we'll have to refer back to the NOFO on that. And basically, the domestic production as well as the domestic ownership, meaning the majority of the ownership, meaning the US citizen requirements, would need to be met in order for the project to be considered. I think rather than going outside of that explanation, if you want to send us the complete structure of how this is going to be set up or organized, we'd be happy to evaluate it and give you the thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever it is for the particular project.
Might add to that we are only investing in technology that's commercially available. So we want to make sure that we meet that.
Thanks, Lisa. Greg. We see a couple in here asking about how those SF forms can be made available. That SF stands for standard form. When you are in your grants.gov application portal, it will present those forms to you as part of the application process. So you don't need to go out and find links to fill those out. Those will be provided as part of the formal process. All right, kind of mixing it up here. All right, could you please clarify how domestically owned eligibility requirement includes companies that majority owned by U.S. lawful permanent residents, or whether majority U.S. citizenship is required? Greg?
Do you want to give me a second and skip to the next one? I'm just going to pull up the
Yeah.
exact language from the NOFO on that one.
Yeah, no, thank you. All right, will a letter of intent be sufficient for a matching fund commitment? One thing we want to stress here, and I know we answered had a somewhat similar answer just a little bit ago on the matching fund side. Letter of intent suggests that there's further process that needs to be completed before approval or underwriting or the generation of a term sheet. And again, the aspect here is projects will score higher and compete in a higher fashion if they are showing a commitment versus an intent. And so as you're working on your funding sources, we want to make sure those are true commitments that can be easily enacted and executed should your project be awarded. Again, part of that implementation ready posture. And so as a letter of intent, if that can be converted or progressed along through to more of a commitment and phrased as such, that would yield a higher score for you.
And I'll jump back to the domestically owned question. In our definition section of the NOFO, there is an explanation there for what we're looking for. But basically, it means any entity organized in the United States under laws of the state, or in the case of a tribal entity or organized under federal, state, or tribal laws, and under the jurisdiction of tribes, including entities formed under Section 17 of the Indian Reorganization Act, and for which a majority, and this is the key here, of the ownership interest is held directly or indirectly through one or more entities by U.S. citizens. So I know that was a lot to take in right there, but if you take a look at the definition section of the NOFO, it will lay it out there for you.
Thanks, Greg. Another common one we're seeing in here, kind of geared toward the feasibility study requirements, right? Would you allow a pre-feasibility study to be accepted at the time of application? Lisa, you want to take that one?
So again, going back to the intent of the program, it's to invest in projects that are going to put additional NPK&S out into the supply chain and do it quickly. So to meet that, I think the intent is that we have a full feasibility study available to us as we're making those decisions. Again, we're talking about a minimum of $15 million investment. So, pretty sizable commitments in terms of project costs and federal match. So I think the intent is to hold firm that a full feasibility study should be included with the application.
Thanks, Lisa. Another great question we have in here, kind of centered around the work plan and budget aspects of your application. Would start dates need to be before or after the administration environmental review? A couple notes here, right? Your application will include an initial checklist, which is essentially information gathering for us to solicit details about your project so we can make an environmental determination and ultimately enact that should you be selected. When you're thinking about your work plan and budget and when you want to set those start dates, instead of making them date specific, I would encourage all applicants to align those to fall within a 60-month time frame, and perhaps you orient those events such as month 1, month 2, or within quarters versus stating a specific date in your application. We are projecting start dates to be potentially January 1st, 2027. But again, let's be flexible in that. Structure your work plan and budgets to maybe be indicating a month number or period within that 60-month performance period that you'll be offered. Trying to mix us up here on some of the questions. What is the definition of fertilizer you will be using? That is clearly defined in the NOFO. And you'll see that as well in some of the content that you'll be receiving as a participant here in this webinar. Fertilizer is very clearly defined as a product that is further processed from raw material. And in our case, for eligibility under fields, must incorporate one or a combination of nitrogen, sulfur, phosphate, or potash. All right, clearing some of those out. Projects that have already started construction phase, are those eligible? Greg or Lisa?
Possibly. It would depend on what the project, how the project is defined that's being proposed. If you have a, facility that's under construction, but we still have to provide equipment, it might be possible that the equipment could be part of the proposal. Again, it would just depend. I think we probably want to talk about that specifically in more detail with whoever's asking it.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, absolutely. That would be a great inquiry or general question if you're looking at your application to shoot over to us so we can refine that more with you. We had a really good one in here. Again, orients us to kind of matching funds. Can in-kind property land be counted as matching funds for this project? This is a common question we get. Obviously, some of these projects or some of these entities may own the land for which they're planning to do expansion or construction on. Or activities under this project. And it goes back to 2 points. One, you cannot have incurred costs prior to being selected for award and the execution of your financial assistance agreement. And so likely you've incurred the cost of that land prior to or outside of that window, making it ineligible to the project. That is still something to speak to as part of the technological feasibility of your project, in that you already own or have access and control of that land to quickly enact your project, but it would not be eligible toward matching funds. What is clear documentation that will be needed for the match? This may vary, and we'd love to chat with you more on this. Again, subject to what resources you're looking at to meet that requirement. Typically, you'll see us kind of classify this. This could be met via cash on hand, right? In which case the entity has available cash resources. You can demonstrate that with a redacted bank statement. You can show that via financing, as Greg has mentioned, either through commercial financing via a lender, in which case, if these are already executed and attainable capital, these could be your promissory note or loan agreements that show available balances to draw on. If you're looking at an investor arrangement and you're pursuing some capital raise through investors, these could be draft investor agreements or term sheets that you've been issued from these sources of funding. And there may be some others in there too, right? Again, we'd love to chat with you on match if you have questions on that. Those are typically our three major areas. In all aspects, again, kind of pointing toward applications and scoring success. You want to make sure that your matching funds are one, clearly identified, and that the timeline, if not executed or secured at the time of application, that could be done so quickly should your project be awarded. All right, I'm going to skip on down a little bit more, unless Greg, Lisa, you see some in there that you want to throw out to the group as well. We have a question here, Lisa. The changes between the July 1st and July 7th NOFO version.
That's primarily the maximum amount. When it originally went out, it was 100 million, and it was meant to be 150. Let's see. I think seemed like in eligible use of funds, there was in the original one something in relation to packaging and labeling, and that was removed, but it was really very minor.
Thanks, Lisa. Simple question in here: are projects less than 30 million eligible? And again, I want to clarify that definition. the minimum total project cost currently eligible under this program is 30 million. So if you have project costs that are coming in less than that, and again, project costs are defined as the federal request plus your match component. If that is less than 30 million, you are not currently eligible for fields. We had a good question in here about the source documentation. What would make up successful source documentation? And I know we have a couple different sections that would feed to. Greg, Lisa, you want to tackle that one?
I think it's going to depend on which category we're addressing. I think we need.
One of those I know, for example, in source documentation that was mentioned, we want to make sure, again, part of the technological feasibility, any key personnel that are attached to the project, resumes and experience is clearly noted. That is a great source documentation. If you have a project that, again, you are enacting construction or it's already been enacted, your construction and design documents are also another valid source documentation item you can include. And there's going to be lots more offtake agreements. If you have your any type of registration information for your product, as you read through the scoring criteria, and I know Greg touched on it, but you want to make sure abundantly clear information is being provided to assert that both the product, but also the implementation posture. And so whatever documentation you feel you want to include in source, it is open-ended, and you can use that scoring metric to kind of to make sure you gauge to provide all the information you can. All right, I know we have just a couple minutes here, maybe a few last-minute questions.
There's one on reimbursements that might be a good one to cover.
Yeah, shoot it out.
Yeah, so the question basically says reimbursement grant details. The entity must be in financial position to cover project cost and then be reimbursed. And that's a question. Are there recommended financial entities to work within this regard? So yeah, just to kind of clarify, this is a reimbursement grant. You will go out, you will incur the expenses, and then you will submit for reimbursement to the USDA. That will then reimburse you for any eligible expenses that are incurred. There are different entities out there that will work with you on that type of stuff. I don't know that we actually have a list of them, but some of the different professional grant servicing or providers out there could help you with that, but you probably have to locate those on your own. And then there was another question about the capital match at 50% of the grant amount. I'm just going to double check that. I want to just confirm this is a one-to-one match program, meaning for every dollar in grant that you request, you will have to provide $1 in match. That is the intent. If there is an incorrect statement in the NOFO, we will address that and mark it accordingly.
Thanks, Greg. Another good one. We have multiple submissions on here. If I have multiple project sites, can they be grouped so they are above the minimum $30 million total project cost? Correct. Yes. Your application may be for one or multiple project sites. You need to make sure that's clearly defined and ensure you've completed an environmental checklist for every project site that you've named. But as long as that's been defined in the project and you've identified the activities going on in each site, you can have multiple locations. Similarly, right, can projects with two or more facilities on different sites? Same concept, right? Multiple sites. One thing to make sure, and it was touched on earlier, projects that are owned by the applicant or related affiliates, we do not allow multiple applications. So you need to consolidate those into one single application request. All right, Lisa, Greg, is there any others in there? And if we didn't get your question answered, of course, we'll be taking away the full Q&A. And as Lisa mentioned, we'll have an FAQ that we'll be putting together to share out on the program information site that will also address a lot of these questions too. So if we missed you today, we will or should be able to capture that through our FAQ that will be coming, or also encourage you to please reach out to us as well. Again, want to chat with you on your project and make sure we get your questions answered as quickly as we can based on your application window here. Lisa, any last minute comments there?
I think we're good. Thank you, everyone, for participating today. We appreciate all the attendance and cooperation on short notice. So everybody have a good afternoon.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Yep, thanks.